Why working remote is killing your dating life. So this is something that not a lot of people talk about, but is becoming more and more popular as time goes on. A lot of people are working remote. I mean, for me, that was a dream of mine. I wanted to be able to work wherever I want, whenever I wanted. I started my own business, and I did that for a long time. However, certain things became more challenging. And one of them was my social life. My social life became more challenging. Meeting women became more challenging. A lot of other things became more challenging if I didn't have my remote work down properly. So if you're working remote and you're watching this video, I'm going to explain why working remote can actually kill your dating life. But if you figure out how to make it work, it can be even better than having a work life where you're going to an office and you're meeting people, okay? Because in reality, that's the biggest difference right there, okay? Working remote can be a very lonely experience if you don't know how to work it. So the way I'm going to talk about this topic is I'm going to talk about my own experience with remote work. Because obviously I have a business that's based, remote working. Most of the time I can work wherever I am. I can work from home. I just need a studio or I just need, a laptop, internet connection. I talk to my clients via Zoom calls. We have occasional in-person meetings, but most of the time when I'm talking to my clients, I'm talking to them through these channels. So the first thing about remote work is that although it seems like a dream at first, which it seemed like a dream to me, there's just something about meeting people and seeing people every single day that really gets you to socialize. Okay, so when I first graduated college, my friends were the people who I worked with at Oracle. I used to work for Oracle, worked there for 3 years. And basically during that time, I was going out with the people from my office. I was hanging out with them every single day. I was talking to them every single day. Even if I wasn't doing my job, I was goofing off, or I told them about the things I did over the weekend. So I would be socializing throughout the week. And then after I was socialized at the office, I would go play a sport or some co-ed league. I would go work out with a group. Then after that, I would go out and hit the bars. I was socializing from, the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. And most people, when they work remote, that's not the case. The only socializing they do are on Zoom calls, or maybe they're software engineers and they just need to talk on Slack. So most of the day, you're not talking to people. You're not socializing. You don't have a tribe. And this is very, very different from how we used to act. Basically, the world that we're living in is getting farther and farther away from what we were adapted for. Okay, we were adapted to live in groups of society, and then later on, then we had cities and everything, and then you'd usually have your church group, you'd usually have your school group, you'd usually have your, the group that you worked with at your job, and then you'd have your family. So you'd be interacting and socializing with them on a regular basis. But nowadays, as we've gotten farther and farther away from that, really, now it's become just the people you work with and then your nuclear family. And if you're working remote and you don't have a family, you are by yourself all the time. And holy cow, does that change your mindset completely? You almost feel ostracized from society. So I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a movie with Robert Downey Jr. called Taxi Driver. It's a very good movie, and it talks about what living in isolation can do to a person. We have almost every single person now is working remote, turning themselves in to the character from this movie who just slowly starts to lose sanity as time goes on. And the only way to fight this is for you to get out there and have a schedule that works for you. So when I was traveling around the world, when I first started working remote, I found that 99% of the time I was just in the co-working space, or I was in the office, or I was, somewhere, and I was just not talking to people. And I was working by myself. I was working out of the hotel or someplace like that. So what do you need to do to fight this? Well, the first thing that you need to do to fight this is have a schedule. So if this video could be summed up in one sentence, it's basically get a social life. How do you get a social life if you work remote though? Okay, well, you have to have interests, have things that you do. Most of you probably like to stay in shape, so you can start there. So there's run clubs, there's workout groups, there's, they're even coming out with sauna, cold plunge, and, social activities like that. So you want to join clubs and societies. You can also, if you have a little bit of money, you can join social clubs. Here they have Soho House in Austin. That's a pretty cool social club that you can join too, but it does cost a little bit of money. If you don't have a lot of money, I recommend joining meetup.com or Eventbrite. And there's another app that you can use called Time Left as well. Time Left is really great for meeting new people as well. If you move to a new city, you're working remote, I highly recommend that you use that app to start out with. Before you even start dating, I want you to create a baseline community that you have. And it is going to require some effort, but trust me, the costs, you have to look at the costs. Does it take some time to create a social group? Yes. Does it take some time to find a social group that you actually click with and get along with? Yes. Does it take some time for you to actually ingratiate yourself in the group and, be a member and, have people want to invite you to things? Yes, it takes time for all of those. What are the costs if you don't do that? The cost of going against that is you are by yourself all the time. I don't know about you, but I had that choice many, many times. And many, many times I picked the be by yourself. And that for me was not a good choice. Okay. I'm not someone who can be by themselves for that long. Yes, my introversion does have limits. Okay. And so I decided that I was going to create a social life for myself. I wanted to meet women. I wanted to have friends. I wanted to get laid. And the only way to do that was by creating social groups. Now, a lot of people will go through the whole stay at home all day and the only socializing they get is through dating apps. I find that guys who do that, they come off very weird on the dating apps. They come off very weird in the dates. If the dates don't work out, they go through this whole sort of burning out crisis. But if you have a good social group, if you have a good backbone, I call it your foundation, then what tends to happen is you're able to deal with those things a lot easier. You're able to maneuver through the dating process a lot more simply. Whereas if you see nobody during the week and then you go on one date and the date doesn't go well, or you think the date goes really well and she doesn't text you back and she ghosts you, you're crushed. You can't move on. So if a guy is coming through this process, I always recommend that he has a good foundation. So the way you want to cure this is you have a schedule that works. Now, I've given you some examples of things that you can do. I've given you some apps that you can download as well. But if you want a full list of activities, a full way for a guy, if you are working remote, to create a social life for yourself, to be able to not only make friends, but also meet women, get dates, have an engaging life that matters, then you can join my free school group. I have tons of resources there. You can also book a call with me directly where we can build that with you. But if you're new to the channel, then I'd recommend that you probably go through the free school group first. You might not be ready to join the coaching just yet, okay? But what I want you to do is I want you to really focus on creating this in your life, because I guarantee you, if you don't focus on this, it will hurt you farther down the line. The quality of your relationships determine the quality of your life. And although we have given ourselves seemingly ultimate freedom by doing remote work and being able to do work anywhere and work online or whatever it is, there's also been a cost to that. And the cost is our relationships. And unfortunately, the quality of our life is largely determined by how good our relationships are with the people around us.